You are in for an interesting ride.
Hello folks, this is Joanna Summerscales from the ET Newsroom, and I'm sharing with you a short segment tonight, a little episode with Peter Vincent, our in-house remote viewer and dowsing detective. Now, whenever he visits different locations, he's always keen to scout about to see if there is anything that might possibly have references to other times in the world. And when he has been on the beach in his lower Adriatic area on holiday, he has brought back pieces which he would reference as artifacts that are very, very interesting because they respond from his unique coding methodology to various very fascinating materials. Everything sort of from bismuth to titanium. So when he was in Swanage recently, he did the same thing. He scoured the beach, had a look, and amongst the pebbles and other normal attributes of a seaside, he found these pieces which he brought back, and we're going to have a look at a comparison from his point of view. And you can see why he finds these incredibly interesting, and if anything that he says has a germ of truth to it, then I think we should be investigating this, and it could indeed lead to an entirely different view of our ancient past. See what you think.
I tell you what, Peter, do you want to start from the beginning and just tell us what we're looking at here?
Well, these come from an archaeological site, as they said, in the lower Adriatic. And they were making handguns, basically models of handguns. And there's one there, fits perfectly in the hand. And there's another one there. It's even got like the bullet shape in there, But I believe these were lasers, actually, that they were representing. They saw people with these things, and they saw flying craft as well, and they made models, because they also made models of the animals they were hunting. And they also left tools with metal in them, which metal wasn't in existence 11,000 years ago, basically, after the Ice Age, and these are much older than that. So then I find that in Swanage, these are on the beach.
So let's go back to the Adriatic ones. Can you point out the Adriatic ones?
These ones here, yeah.
So these three.
Yeah. So people say, they're shaped by the sea, but they're not. They were made and then rounded by the sea. See, that's the point. And they fit perfectly in the hand. They wouldn't know that they wouldn't work. They saw these people walking around far in advance of them, from another world, basically, with this sort of equipment, and they said, these are the gods, so I want to make an image of the gods, like we have stained glass windows with images of Christ on it. So that was their thing of being to represent the gods. So
and let's come down to these then. Where are these from?
Well, the Swanage Beach.
So Swanage, UK.
And they are finding archaeological things down there, like awls, which are little boring equipments, and spear tops and things like that. But on the cliffs, on the hillsides, the National Trust, basically, there are two giant triangles and there are long barrows up there. So they were seeing things here the same way as they were seeing them down in the lower Adriatic areas. The thing is that it's thought that before the Ice Age, and we're going back maybe 60, 70,000 years, before the Ice Age, people were living here. Then along comes the Ice Age, so they all go south. As the ice retreated, then they all went back north again. So the technology and the ways and means of what they call the hunter-gatherers, basically they took back to the north. So if they've seen these down near the Med areas in the lower Adriatic, they then reproduced them up from whatever they could find to equal. that. I mean, there is no logic in this at all as a tool, at all. There is in those, that's the point. So there's a totally different stone that's washed up on the beach in any other form. I mean, if you go along the south coast, they're all little round pebbles, some big and some old, larger. And you've got things that they used to break down in flint, that sort of thing. This is totally different. And also, they found slate or they found something equivalent to slate. They were making arrowheads out of them and spear tops. It's not that common to find these things, but the sea is pushing them up. So obviously, they're coming from an area when sea levels were much, much lower, and it's being washed up onto the beaches today. And people just walk over this and they don't realise that this is part of the very ancient history, far older than we're given any credit. I mean, one museum I went to in this area that things like this are found, they've got stone pottery dated 100,000 years old. And in another museum, they've got little artefacts that were dated at 85,000 years old. So we're going well before the Ice Age, probably. In this area here, because they were making models of mammoths and bears, also whales as well. I mean, I know of dolphins. They're making models of dolphins and seals and lizards and things like that. Seeing sharks' heads carved, frogs, they were hunting to eat frogs. But the thing is, I've not actually seen whales in the Med, but they must have seen them because they were making models of whales. These were in their temples at that time, which are now well below the sea, basically getting washed up. One of the other things too is, on our research, they've left tungsten in here. Now, I'll tell you what Geoffrey Crockford was finding, and I found this too, that because the Anunnaki who came here, which are thought to be the space forms, that wanted the minerals here, they could not sweat. So therefore, they couldn't go down deep in the mines to mine themselves. So they had to breed a form of modern human to go and do the mining for them. When the mining was going on with lasers into particles, there was dust left, and in the dust was all the trace elements and particles that they were mining for. So the ancients knew this, the so-called modern humans knew this, so they put that paste dust into a sort of a cement type pottery mixture, which basically is this. So there's tungsten in here. So where did they get tungsten from?
And when you say there's tungsten...
Yeah, it goes against tungsten as one of the elements that's contained within here.
And so what are we looking at here, Peter?
There's metal. There's a metal part in this piece of rock here. So they've ground the rock down, kept the metal part in it, and they hold it as a worshipping stone, basically. So where was the metal? And here we've got something that is a tool for grinding. So there's your metal there, and it looks like a hint of copper in there. And it's in the stone. Look, in the stone, just like that there, very similar to that. And there it is in there. And what they've done is they've had a hand like that so they could scrape powder off of rock to make the paste for the paint pigments. This one I found near some orangey red brick-like material, and with all the lines where they've been scraping on it, and they would then put water with it and make a paste to paint their face. So the question is, where did the metal come from?
And what makes you think that they made it into a paste to paint their face?
Well, they had to paste their face with pigments of some sort, so therefore they'd had to get the dyes out of various plants and other things.
Do you mean that in sort of terms of their religious observations?
Yes, and also painting their clothing and things like that, because they actually had a paw print stamp for animal paws. So therefore they'd have some sort of fabric, and then they'd put perhaps black dye or ink from an octopus or something like that, or a squid, and then put the paw print in there and do the paw prints all over the dye. So it's the equivalent of a dye stamp. And we've found several of these dye stamps, But what I'm getting at, it's the metal. They didn't have metal. The really ancient hunter-gatherers did not have metal. So where did they get it from? And where did they find it? In the rock, save the rock into a tool,
And is this from the Adriatic?
Yeah, that one's there. Yeah. And it's what it is. In fact, what is interesting is this here is very, very similar in a smaller discretion as this bit here. Look, see, it's got a groove in it. So, you know, when gold came in as a very special metal, this is why on UFO sites and things like this, we're finding titanium and other metals that they couldn't possibly have had. And Geoffrey Crockford was saying, well, there were crashes. They did mine and they did manufacture down here, but when they left, due to the truce they had between the good form and the satanic form, which is how we get religion today, they left metals which they thought that the ancients could not get hold of in deep lagoons or in lakes and things like that. But there were some metals left. So basically they found these little bits of metal in things and then decided to make a tool with it in to be useful because it's stronger. But you can't get away from it. I mean, it's as obvious as a pike's knife. It's a ridge of metal there, like that is going through there. And I'll tell you this, I took this to a jeweller to see how strong that was, and he broke a diamond drill dental device on it, trying to drill a hole. Yeah, that broke a diamond tip drill, trying to get it in there. It's so tough. Now, Skinwalker Ranch, they're trying to drill into a hillside with a large, now an 8-inch drill, because the previous drill just can't get into it. And this is exactly an example of it. The metal they were using is so strong that a diamond trip drill wouldn't go through it. We're finding in that thing exactly the same as what they're finding. So they've got a UFO in there or something like that, and they can't get into it. Also, we've had metal that's fossilized into stone. They found a pickaxe in a mine in America, and it's in one of the museums in America. The iron has crystallized in fossilization, at least 400 million years old. The actual handle is turned into coal. Again, about 400 million years old to do that. So the question is, if you've got metal from a crash scene that's now under the sea that they didn't think they could get hold of, and then they've got hold of some, what is interesting is the tools that they made of that metal is fossilized. So therefore, how old is humanity? It's certainly not 7 million years old, because they can only judge this from finding a bone or a skull. But what about looking at it the other way around in geology and saying, well, hang on a minute, we didn't have metals. Nobody made metals. So how did they find metal? You know, so how old are those people who made those devices to turn the metal, or the metal turns into fossilization to a stone? And we've got a little amphora, which was used for, let's say, the equivalent of holy oil or something like that. It's turned to stone, but it's actually the shape of a little thing, and it would have had a little wooden stopper in the top of it. And also a knife that's now stone, but it's actually got all the colours and the responses of being metal, fossilised. Questions are not being answered, but there are preventions, because universities don't seem to want to know. Unfortunately, in America, a little bit more with it, and that's why we've got such a Skinwalker Ranch and Ancient Aliens and all those programs on the Blaze channel. And if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's channel 161 Free Stat or channel 64 Free View. Basically, every day of the week there's something on about ancient. Then they go all over the world looking at these ancient sites. I mean, in some areas of, I think it's Chile or Peru, there are such constructions, although damaged, that some of them they couldn't even do today. Never mind lifting them today. You know, how do you lift a 150-ton block of stone up today? Not even the cranes we've got could do that. So what they were doing is they were somehow demassing the actual rock so it would float up and be put into position. And all over archaeology in Sicily, even in Russia, apparently, and in Latin America particularly, there are these sites that have even got carvings of people sitting in things with tubes coming out of their mouth. Now, I will show you something. That's fossilised bone turned to stone, and they made of a mammoth. Here's the trunk, there's the two legs in the front and one at the back, which is quite an interesting thing because it's still made by some tribes today, right? And you can see it quite there. The trunk's around there, and there's your legs. So they made a model out of there of the animals that they hunt. And here, more importantly, is a model of something with wings on it, because you can put a penknife down there between that. That was laid on after. And the head is here, and the head is looking that way, and the wings are wrapped around that way. So that's the equivalent of what I consider as an Anunnaki angel. They made a model of what they saw. Yeah, so you can't say this is a one-off because another one washed up as well, but it wasn't in such good condition. But this other one here is even more revealing. Again, the head's looking to the right from the left, and there's your wings around there, but it does appear that there's a tube. There was a tube coming out of this one. So that's a breathing tube, I think, coming around there. They were making models of things that they saw and wanted to record. They couldn't write anything down. To my way of thinking, it's not a dog. There's your long arms coming down here and your two legs. To my way of thinking, that is a representative of what E.T. was. Phone home E.T., you know. I mean, they're badly worn, but the thing is they were making these things. I mean, they saw these things, you know. If you see a person with a helmet on, and he's got his hand up there, there's a slit there for the visual, and there's in his spacesuit. But people would just walk over these things. They wouldn't see them. But they're all in context because they're not all over the beaches. They're only in certain areas where it gets washed up. So you know that way out below the sea, there's something that is being brought up gradually over thousands of years and coming up in the sands of time, basically. So
fascinating stuff.
Yeah. So it's the question of when you see these. I mean, I walked up and down Swanage Beach. I could have done it another 10 times and I might have found a few more. But the thing is, they're all in that shape, totally different from anything else on the beach.
They are quite different, and they certainly don't look like pebbles of anything remotely like.
No. Yeah.
It's interesting how different this material is from the lower Adriatic material. Yeah. Oh, a sitting person.
Yeah, a sitting person. Yeah, so they were making sitting figures, you know, and their arms are on the lap there.
That really does look like a figure, doesn't it?
Yeah. But you see, you find them all together, not one just here and there and say, oh, well, that could just be an act of a thing. But also you find they were making cutting tools out of stone. Now, somebody said to me in a museum, oh, that's been shaped by the sea. But then when you found another 3 like it, although some of them were different materials, they were all the same design. And I said, nature does not do that. It's just they've got this ideology they've been trained up to see and not say anything about it. And one of the reasons is it's too embarrassing. They can't explain it because they're not allowed to explain it. That's the crux of the matter. So the question is that is definitely being... I showed it to somebody, said that has definitely been rounded at the edges and it was pointed, you know. So they would get a bamboo pole or a wooden pole like that. It would be stuck in the end, bound round with some birch bark glue or something like that. And they've got a very nasty spear. And this one here has actually got some stuff. See, it's been in the sea there. And that's strengthened that end, you see.
Yes, it does look like it's been manufactured in some way.
Yeah, quite. But the thing is this really slate? In which case slate's not found anywhere around that area? Or is this some sort of binding type of material that they've been finding in Skinwalker Ranch, which is actually, they said, was tiling used for deflecting heat on re-entry? Because all spacecraft have got to prevent overheating and to... The other thing too is, one of the things they've got to sort out is the fact that if they go so fast, they can't see where they're going. So how do they protect themselves with the normal detritus of space within the universe, which could knock them completely for 6? Well, Geoff said that they had a diverting thing around them that pushed everything out the way, so that they cut themselves through, so anything coming towards them would be deflected. Although you couldn't see it, it would just naturally be deflected. the other thing too is, as Skinwalker Ranch are finding, is that the orbs and spheres, as they call them, are balls of light. Well, this is because they're spread between 2 dimensions. We don't see the full craft at all. All we see is a ball of light because that's the friction between the 2 dimensions. When they come down, you will see a craft, you know, either as a fighter jet or a disc or a triangle or something like that. But now it's too dangerous for them to do it because we can shoot them down. If they come into our time zone, we can shoot them down, but we can't shoot them down in their time zone because we can't see them properly. Or can we shoot them if they're halfway between one and the other? So that's why the Battle of Los Angeles was shooting God knows what up into the sky. It was just going completely through the thing because it wasn't really there, but the hologram of it was there. About space telescopes and things, the Mind Sensory System can pick up whatever is in these objects with the right codes for each particular particle substance. Now, Geoffrey Crockford and Nigel invented something called the hologram telescope, and I believe that you were involved on that. Now, that is something that's the size of a football pitch or even bigger. Basically, you put down a disc which is manufactured, but it has magical properties that you don't realise other than playing music.
You're talking about a CD
disc. Yeah, yeah.
Or DVD.
Yeah, and you put a lithium battery on it, and you then put some Sarson's malt vinegar and some lighter fuel from a zip lighter. Those combinations on the sensory system draw down a hologram of the sun, which is, of course, the centre of our solar system. When you've got the sun, you can then go out with chemicals that would be recognised as the moon, recognised as the earth, and then work out to the other hard objects, right the way out to Neptune, and then the hellebores all the way out. And what is interesting, you can walk through this hologram telescope that you've dragged down, and you can go behind the sun, and you can go behind the moon. And you can see what you're not supposed to see because we all go around in unison. So therefore, any scientific non-human constructions there are easily seen on the hologram telescope. Now, they were picking up UFOs and gigantic craft within the solar system. What they did, they found the chemicals that, like titanium and things like that, that represented. Then they put down another CD disc, and then that would enlarge the object that they were looking at. They could even pick the logos up on these craft. And I've been told that some of these craft are so big, they can be 10 miles by 10 miles by 10 miles, and they never land. They just go around, and everybody is created on it. Everybody takes off from it, and everybody takes the goods back onto it. So nothing is wasted. It's all manufactured on this craft. And they might do a 5,000 year circle. So, you know, we're not looking at the real world, I'm sorry. You go by the archaeology that's been left. You go by the evidence that you can pick up that's been left. You follow a system of sensory remote viewing and sensory subjects for the chemicals, particles and everything in what you're looking at that other people can also use for themselves. And that's called a measured form, and it's therefore scientific because it's measured and other people can do it.
It's replicable.
Replicable, yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah, right.
I think it's almost lunchtime.
Yeah.
Will be in a minute.
And I've had the cup of tea from Elizabeth. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I think on that note, we'll close that little part.